Hey, thank you, guys. Good morning on a Tuesday. Fox News Alert now. Stunning new revelations this morning about just how long top intel officials have been warning the president about the threat posed by ISIS. Fox News confirming the president's been getting specific briefings on the dangers of the terror group and what they were planning and plotting for more than a year. Intriguing report. Good morning. I'm Bill Hemmer. Welcome here to America's Newsroom. How you doing?
Indeed it is. I'm doing well. How you doing?
Nice to see you again.
You too.
It's been some time.
I know, really. Good morning, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum. So on this story, sources are telling Fox that the information the president received was, quote, strong and granular in detail when it came to the news on ISIS that they gave him. They say there was no way to interpret what he is being told as anything but bad.
So Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief of The Hill. Bob, good morning to you. You've heard about this report. Catherine Herridge leading on that this morning. It's brand new. What does it indicate, do you believe?
Well, I think this indicates, Bill, that the White House has basically been pointing at the intel community for not being on top of ISIS, having wrong information. And now we're having the intel community point its finger back at the White House. That's why I think this is so significant.
So, Bob, some have argued ISIS and its movement caught everyone by surprise, almost as if the administration was blindsided. Does that run counter to, does this rather run counter to that argument now?
It does, and it also raises question of why the president called ISIS JV and downplayed their threat to the United States and around the world. That's why. And I think that lawmakers are also going to have to weigh in when they get back in town on this, because they've been getting the briefings as well.
Interesting. Okay, so maybe we'll hear from them as well. Quote, we were ready to fire on a moment's notice. We had a couple hundred targets. No order was given.
Yeah.
What does that suggest about the strategy or the thinking of the commander-in-chief?
That shows some frustration from the people that are working at these targets and coming up with these targets. It also plays into the narrative that this White House has been too cautious on foreign policy. Of course, this White House says that the last White House was too aggressive. But overall, it does play in that narrative that the administration has been tentative, and there haven't been any bold actions, at least not yet.
There's one other detail in here that I think is interesting, and I don't know how we interpret this. The president reads the brief, unlike predecessors who would only get a summary. That's what the report is suggesting today. Does that tell you anything?
Well, that shows that this president said, I'm going to be a hands-on president. I'm not going to be briefed by staff. I'm going to read the actual document. And so, but therefore, on the other hand, if he doesn't see something, well, he can't blame staff on it, because he has said he's reading it himself. He's not getting briefed like prior presidents by staff. Okay. So you mentioned quickly members of Congress. How many members of Congress are privy to the same information as the president? Not many. I mean, you have to look at the key committees of the intel committees, both on the House and the Senate side, as well as leadership. So it's a very closed community. Of course, they can't say what they have seen, but overall, they're going to be asked questions when they get back in town next week, no doubt about it. You're talking 4 people, maybe 6, maybe not much more than that. Thank you, Bob. Bob Cusack from Washington on that breaking news. Martha.
So all this means that the White House is still working on its strategy for ISIS, even as we learned that the president was warned about this group long before their rise in Iraq and Syria. So what should the president do? What action does he need to take now? We have a great panel that is going to look at his options in light of everything that we are learning now. And that decision to read the brief and not to be briefed on it, it doesn't allow you the opportunity to go back and forth with questions, ask those at the Pentagon and intel sources why they put that in the brief, what their concerns are. So we're going to talk about that and lots more coming up.
Also, you've got all these European leaders now meeting as of today, then later in the week to talk about this and a lot more. It will be on the agenda, priority number 1.
So we're just getting word today that 6 terrorists were killed in a U.S. drone strike on Al-Shabaab, the terror group that carried out the horrific mall killings in Kenya. There's still no word yet on the fate of this group's leader. He is the main target, or would be considered to be at least one of the targets in this potentially. This, as Great Britain takes bold new action that is aimed at defeating the ISIS threat. Prime Minister David Cameron came out very strongly on Friday, and then over the weekend he's pushing for tough, sweeping new laws in his country that are intended to combat homegrown terror and to stop jihadists from re-entering England.
The idea that someone can go from this country, go to Syria, declare jihad, make all sorts of plans to start doing us damage, and then contemplate returning to Britain, having declared its allegiance, their allegiance, with another state. That is the problem that we need to address.
The problem. All right, Peter Ducey is live in Washington. So let's go to the drone strike first, aimed at al-Shabaab. Do we know any details about who was taken out in this?
Martha, so far, just in the last few minutes, we've been getting some details from members of al-Shabaab, actually, for the first time. And they're saying that the spiritual leader, Ahmed Abdi Gadan, was in one of 2 vehicles that was hit, but we don't know if he was one of the 6 people they say was killed in the strike. A strike that locals are saying sounded like an earthquake. Again, the AP reporting 6 militants were killed. They just don't know if Gadan was one of them. The hit was about 100 miles to the south of Mogadishu. You see it there on the map in the lower Shabelle area of Somalia, which is apparently where al-Shabaab, this terror group that is allied with al-Qaeda, trains their fighters. The American drone was trying to zero in on Gadan as he left a get-together with other top al-Shabaab brass. All the Pentagon is going to say about this, has been saying about the success of this strike so far, is that, quote, U.S. military forces conducted an operation in Somalia today against the al-Shabaab network. We are assessing the results of the operation and will provide additional information as and when appropriate. Now, following this strike, some early reports on the ground are that Islamic militants started rounding up and arresting locals trying to figure out who was spying for the American military. Martha?
All right, more details on that as it comes. Let's switch back to this David Cameron story. He's taking some very strong steps to try to beef up security out of very legitimate concern that somebody may be coming back to attack them at home.
And Martha, the British Prime Minister has a plan. David Cameron says he wants to pull the passports of any British citizen who may be trying to go and join ISIS. He also says he wants to urgently find and fight ISIS abroad.
We must use all the resources at our disposal, our aid, our diplomacy, and our military. We need a firm security response, whether military action to go after terrorists, international cooperation on intelligence, or uncompromising action against terrorists at home.
Prime Minister Cameron will meet with the leaders of other NATO nations, including President Obama, later this week at a summit in Wales. Martha.
Big developments. Peter, thank you very much.